Hi everyone, today's session is the assignment discussion session for Business Law for Managers unit, and my name is Shazia Khan. So before I go into the assignment discussion session, I just want to give you a brief overview of what we did in the last 4 learning outcomes, so you've got an idea of what we have covered in the last 4 learning outcomes, and then I'll go on to the assignment discussion on the Business Law for Managers unit. Thank you. So firstly, in assignment in learning outcome 1, we looked at understanding generic business law, why law is needed for businesses, why it's so important, why businesses need to operate, laws and legislations, and what the reasoning is behind it. We looked at business law, law and regulations in a business in learning outcome 1. We also looked at the business legal structure. We looked at the key areas of business law, things like contract, employment, company law, intellectual property, consumer protection law, tax laws. We also looked at business formation and structure. We looked at the regulatory compliance. We looked at dispute resolutions very briefly, and then in the next learning outcomes, we'll go in more detail. We looked at offer, acceptance, consideration, capacity. We then went on to look at the impact of business law. We looked at 1.1, which is to explain why it is important to have business-related laws in the UK and why it's there's a need for it. We looked at protection of rights, dispute resolution. We looked at consumer protection. And then we looked at the principles of business law, which was 1.2. And we looked at the elements of company law, common law. We looked at civil law, criminal law, and looked at statutory law. We then went on to look at differentiating between civil and criminal law, and we looked at the purpose of it, the legal action, the outcome, the burden of proof, and an example of that. We then went on to look at elements of criminal law and looked at the differentiating between criminal and civil law. So that was learning outcome 1. We then went on to learning outcome 2, which expanded on areas that we've discussed also in learning outcome 1. So we looked at understanding the legal and justice systems within a business context. We looked at the criminal justice system in the UK, the court system in the UK, and the prison system in the UK. We looked at the role of legal systems such as regulation of business practices, protection of rights, enforcement of contracts. We looked at dispute resolution, ensuring fair competition. We then went on to look at civil justice system and the criminal justice system. We also looked at alternative dispute resolution, which was ADR, the purpose and relevance to business. We looked at the 2 types of business legal cases in justice, contract, employment, intellectual property, corporate fraud. We then went on to look at 2.4, which was the importance of compliance and legal awareness, and we looked at elements of risk management, reputation management, operational efficiency, avoiding criminal liability. We then went on to 2.1, explain what is meant by the term legal system. And we looked at the components of the legal system, things like legislation. We looked at directives, case law, treaties. We then went on to look at 2.2, describe the legal system, court structures in the UK. We looked at the court structure in the UK, which was criminal courts, magistrates' courts, Crown Courts, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, and what each court did. We then went on to look at the civil courts and what each one entailed and what their role was. So we looked at County Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court. We also looked at specialist courts and tribunals, such as employment tribunals, family courts, and commercial courts. We then went on to look at 2.3, which was explain what is meant by the term justice system. We looked at key elements of the justice system, so the role of government, what the responsibilities are, the role of government agencies as well, and what their responsibilities are. We then went on to look at describing a justice system in the UK, and we looked at the courts in the UK system and the justice system. So we looked again in more detail at the type of courts and Then we went on to look in learning outcome 2 at the correction in the UK justice system. And we looked at types of correctional institutions, prisons, category A, B and C and D. We then went on to look at the probation services and the youth offending institutions. We also went on to look at the correctional facilities, correctional systems such as punishment, rehabilitation and public safety. That was learning outcome 2. Then we went on to learning outcome 3, and in here we looked at understanding key business related laws. So we looked at consumer law, contract law, law of tort, and we looked at understanding these laws in regards to the importance of these and the definition of these. So we looked at also health and safety law, intellectual property law, we looked at competition law, and we looked at environmental law as well. We looked at elements of describing key features of consumer law in the UK, and looked at things like false advertising, health and safety, fit for purpose, satisfactory quality. And then we went on to look at describing key features of contract law, offer, acceptance, consideration, intent. And then we looked at describing key features of tort law. Here we looked at elements of possession of rights, violation of rights, injury, types of torts, negligence, intentional torts, strict liability. We then went on to look at describing key features of international laws. We looked at international economic law, trade law, investment law, financial regulations, and we looked at the use of force, disarmament, peacemaking. We also looked at international criminal court, ad hoc tribunals. This was learning outcome 3. We then finally did learning outcome 4, which was the final learning outcome, understand how laws impact on businesses. Here we looked at elements of understanding how laws impact on businesses. We looked at the element of the business formation and structure, so company law and its impact. We looked at employment law in more detail than the previous learning outcome and in more detail and its impact. Consumer health and safety regulations, competition law. We then went on to explain how businesses are legally formed. We looked at sole trader. We looked at the definition and the formation of sole trader, liability, taxation. We then went on to look at the definition and legal formation of a partnership and private limited company, legal formation, liability, taxation. We then went on to look at describing the impact of key legislation on a business in the UK. So we looked at data protection, general data protection regulations, GDPR, the key requirements, the impact, the consequence of non-compliance. We went on to look at health and safety regulations and looked at the Health and Safety Act, at Work Act 1974, the key requirements of that and the consequences of non-compliance with that act. We then went on to look at consumer laws, Consumer Rights Act 2015, the key impact of that and the consequences of non-compliance of that. We then went on to look at the Employment Rights Act 1996 and Equality Act 2010 and look at the key requirements of that, the impact of that and the consequences of non-complying with that. We then went on to look at 4.3, which was explaining why contractual obligations are important to a business. And we looked at key reasons of the importance of a business, duty to fulfill a contract, to protect both parties, so the definition, importance of that is legally binding. We looked at that. We looked at examples of contractual obligations, so we gave a scenario and looked at duty to fulfill a contract to protect both parties, and that is legally binding. We also looked at 4.4, explain how a business could resolve legal disputes. And we looked at the arbitration. Mediation, we looked at what mediation is, the key features of mediation, that's non-binding, confidential and collaborative, and what is suitable for. We looked at arbitration, the definition, the key features, that's binding, private, is customizable, and what it's suitable for. We then went on to look at litigation and the importance of litigation within the business, and why it is the key features that it's binding and the court judgments are legally enforceable. It's generally public, and it's appealable, and what it's suitable for as well. So we looked at the litigation process and the importance of that, and how businesses can resolve legal disputes through these areas, these methods like mediation, arbitration, and litigation. So we looked at the elements of that. So that was learning outcome 4. So we've gone through all the learning outcomes 1, 2, 3, and 4 quite briefly with you, because there are recordings for each learning outcome on Moodle that you can refer to. And we finished with them learning outcomes. So please go on to Moodle to refer to them learning outcomes with the recordings. And a lot of the learning outcomes overlap with each other, but we're just gonna, there's an overlap, but when you're doing the assignment, we'll reiterate where you'll find each part of it, okay? So going back to the assignment slides, the assignment discussion session, we look at the learning outcomes, which is the 4 learning outcomes I've just quickly gone through. So just a brief overview of them is to understand generic business law. Learning outcome 2 is to understand legal and justice systems within a business context. And learning outcome 3 to understand key business related laws, like we looked, consumer, employment, environmental, etc., etc. And learning outcome 4 is to understand how laws impact on businesses. So the impact of laws on businesses, and we looked at the alternative dispute resolution, we looked at the elements of the court system, we looked at elements of, you know, how it could impact on businesses, and what are the implications of that. So that is the learning outcomes, again, just briefly gone through them. So now we're just going through the assignment plenary, so you know what you have to do. So you have to do an assignment declaration, and that assignment declaration declares that your work is your own work and that you've not copied it, and it's not a form of AI, okay? Because it's really important that you have to sign this declaration, and I've just increased the size of it so you know. This declaration identifies, it has your name on, it has your student number on, your course on, and your assignment name as well. And it confirms that the work that you've done, you've read and understood the awarding bodies policies on plagiarisms, and you've read the college's guidance on plagiarism, and you've referenced all your work and all your sources that you've used. You've fully referenced it, and the referencing system, I'll reiterate this again and again, is the Harvard system that we use. You've fully texted and quoted all the books and references and referenced them properly. You've provided sources, tables, and they are not your own work. You have to declare that is not your own work. You've not made use of work of any other students, so you've not colluded with any other students' work. The use of AI, and this includes your own work. So you've not sought or used any professional services, so you've not bought work online to produce this work, and you understand that, you know, the work that you've submitted could be is in accordance with the regulations, and that, you know, there will be issues of plagiarism if not submitted properly and not taken into account, and you've declared it and you've signed at the bottom of the declaration. So that is your declaration. If you need to get a copy of the declaration, there's a link there as well. That declaration identifies that the work is yours. It has not been included, it's not taken off AI, because there's a 20% acceptance on AI, so it has to be below 20%, but you need to make sure you avoid using resources that are AI related that will help you towards this, because a lot of the answers to the brief are on your slide, so there's no use of AI. So please avoid using AI as you are signing a assignment declaration. That is malpractice then, okay? You are saying that you have understood the plagiarism guidance, but then you are you know, identifying that you've not. So just going on about the assignment declaration, the importance of it, that you sign the declaration to identify that this is your work. So you need to make sure that the work you submitted is referenced properly and it is your own work. So what information needs to go on the assignment? So on the assignment, you need to include the following on the front cover. You need to have your name, you need to have your centre number, need to have your tutor's name, your registration number and your word count, which for this assignment is 3,000 words. Your student signature, your date of submission is really, really important, and the unit level, which is business law for managers. And going back to plagiarism and collusion again, students must submit and complete work that is their own. Plagiarism is presenting the thoughts, ideas, and words of another, as I've mentioned earlier, as they were your own. Collusion may occur when students' work are very similar, and in some cases of that of another fellow student. This is also plagiarism. And as I've recommended, plagiarism is taken very seriously, as students are recommended to refer to the academic misconduct policy, which is on Moodle, which is the virtual learning environment. So at the start of the assignment, you need to include the following: table of contents, and that's really important because identify where your work is. Your font size needs to be 12, it needs to be 1.5 spacing, and it needs to be in Microsoft Word format and not Google. You can use the free Word process Office and download it from the link that I've left there. So you could use that. Do not use Google, okay? Page numbers need to be inserted, as the content page needs to correlate with the pages. You need to have an introduction at the start, and make sure you are putting all your assessment criteria in headings. Make sure when we go through it, I will show you that in more detail. General information. The taught part of this unit will be delivered at UK Versity Online. There are a number of texts related to this unit found in the VLE. Handbooks and assignment briefs are all available on Moodle, and all sorts of additional information and any sort of additional course material is available on Moodle for you. So the assignment brief, I'll show you how it looks. Most of the stuff off there has come onto these slides, so just refer to the assignment brief as well as this if you need to. Study skills. The study skills used, developed and assessed through the assignments are as follows: critical thinking. Planning and organising and time management is so important. Researching, gathering information, note-taking and summarising. Analysis, written skills, academic skills, including references. Again, Harvard referencing is the system we use for the UK Versity. Application of IT skills and reflection. So going on to the assignment, the scenario. Your college has arranged for students to attend some training sessions where local entrepreneurs and professionals will hold workshops on starting a business. Okay, you are going to attend the law training sessions to learn more about the generic business law of your country. You're also going to learn about legal and justice systems in your country, also about key business-related laws, which you must be aware of, and how laws will impact on a business. And there are 4 workshops which will address each area separately. So there's 4 tasks to this. So this scenario will be based around 4 tasks, and I'll go through each task, okay? So task 1 of 4. Assignment brief 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3. You are to produce a report, again in Word, which considers the following. So this is your heading, and this is what you will be putting for each element. So the importance of business-related laws. So that you need to have as your heading. Do not change the wording. Use the wording that is on the assignment brief. The importance of business-related laws. And for this part of it, you can go on to Learning Outcome 1, pages 12 onwards, which will help you at looking at the importance of business-related laws. Then the second part of it is the principles of business law. So here you will look at, that is the heading. So you're looking at the principles of business law, and you will go on to Learning Outcome 1, pages 17 onwards to help you and support you do that. Then the third part of it is the difference between civil and criminal law, which is on Learning Outcome 1, pages 25 onwards. So I've put them learning outcome for you there, so you have an idea of what you need to do and where you can find the things, okay? So each one, so there's 3 parts to task 1. So the first one's that which needs to be a heading, second one's that which needs to be a heading, and the third one's that which needs to be heading. In red, it's where you can find and where you can find the answers, and it will help you with the information. For this task, task 1, the submission is the form of report written again in Word format. The recommended word limit is 600 words, excluding diagrams, references, and appendices. So for each one, you need to do probably about 325 words each. Okay, no, sorry, it's 10% leeway, so it's probably about just over 250 words each, just over for each part of it, because there's 3 parts there. Okay, so you need to make sure you don't change these headings, don't change any wordings, and stick to them. Write the heading down and then write under the heading. Write this heading down, write underneath the answer. So that is task 1. Task 2. And the task 2 is 2.1. You'll be looking at learning outcome 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. Now that you have some fundamental information about business law, you are going to learn more about the legal and justice system in your country. Write an essay in which, again, this needs to be in Word. You need to look at, number 1, explaining what is meant by the term legal system. And that is available on Learning Outcome 2 slides, pages 6 onwards. You've got to describe a legal system, Learning Outcome 2, pages 12 onwards. And then you've got to explain what is meant by the term justice system, Learning Outcome 2, pages 27 onwards. And then finally, you've got to describe a justice system, which is Learning Outcome 2, pages 33 onwards. In this, in task 2, there's 4 parts. 1 as a heading, right under there. Second one as a heading, right under there. Third one as a heading, right under there. And fourth one as a heading. Do not change the wording. I reiterate this all the time. And each learning outcome tells you where you can find the information for that. So that is, again, task 2 of 4. In that task, again, it's 800 words. Because it's 4 parts, 200 words each per part. And that is the recommended limit for you to do that in the Word report. Make sure you're using words and make sure you are writing under each one. So that is task 2. Task 3 of 4. So task 3 of 4, you've got to look at learning outcome 3, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. So the course tutor in task 3 has asked you to present information on key business related laws. Prepare a presentation about the key features. So you need to do a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation about each of the elements there. So you need to look at consumer law. So that is learning outcome 3, pages 14 onwards. And then look at contract law. Learning outcome 3, pages 21 onwards. So what the importance is, why there's a need for it, why there's a need to have contract law, why it's needed, why there's for a business, and look at elements of that. And then look at the formation, like offer acceptance, things like that. Then the third part is the law of tort, which is learning outcome 3, pages 26 onwards. And then the 4th part is international laws, learning outcome 3, pages 32 onwards. So each of them needs to be in a PowerPoint slide. So you need to be writing about each of them in regards to what their key features are. Look at if you're looking at contract, offer, acceptance, consideration, intent. If you're looking at tort law, you need to look at possession of rights, violation of rights, injury, types of negligence. And if you're looking at international law, look at international economic law, the key components, international criminal law. So these are elements, but they need to all be in a presentation for the business related law. So it all needs to be in the presentation form, so in PowerPoint. Okay, so you need to make sure that you do that in PowerPoint. Again, the submission is in the form of a 10-minute presentation, equivalent to 500 to 600 words, and must be a recognized presentation format. Enhance your presentation with visual aids if you wish to. So if you do PowerPoint slides, put some visual aids on. make sure you're doing it in regards to the presentation format, and it has to be a 10-minute presentation equivalent for each of them. So you could have one presentation slide with all them in. So it needs to have consumer law, contract law, law of tort, and international law in one presentation. 500 to 600 words, and must be in the presentation format. And enhance your presentation skills with visual aids if you wish to. Okay, so that is learning task 3 of 4. Next one is task 4 of 4. In this task, the 4th training session will concentrate on raising awareness of how laws could impact a business. Write an essay in which you explain, number 1, so there's 4 parts to task 4. Explain how businesses are legally formed, which is it's on learning outcome 4, pages 14 onwards. Secondly, describe the impact of key legislation on a business. So learning outcome 4, pages 22 onwards. Thirdly, explain why contractual obligations are important to a business. And that's looking at learning outcome 4, pages 29 onwards. And then fourthly, explain how a business could resolve different legal disputes. And that's learning outcome 4, pages 35 onwards, looking at arbitration, mediation, litigation, things like that. Do not change the wording again, okay? So there's 4 parts to this. First one is there, which needs to be your heading, and you will write under your heading the answer. Second one is there, you'll write that as a heading and the answer underneath. And then third one is there, which you write as a heading and then answer underneath. And fourth one is there, you'll write as a heading with the answer underneath. The ones in red identify where you can find the information for that answer, okay? The submission is a form of an essay, okay, written in a Word document. So it needs to be a Word format. And again, it's 800 words, excluding any diagrams, references, and appendices. And you need to make sure that you are sticking to the word count as well. So for each part, this task 4, there's 4 parts, make sure it's about 200 words each. So it identifies that you are sticking to the word count, okay? So referencing for all tasks, it's really important you reference properly for all tasks. You are expected to use relevant academic and reliable sources and clearly reference these in your work. References should be added to the text and placed at the end of the reference list using the Harvard system of referencing, and you should complete a bibliography to support all your evidence. So the system that is used, as I mentioned, is a Harvard system of referencing, and that's the one that's used for UK Varsity. Make sure you have an introduction and a conclusion, and references list and bibliography. What I've realized is when I've been marking assignments, people have used the Harvard system, but not put in alphabetical order. Make sure you put everything in alphabetical order. So some assignment guidance and support. So firstly, make sure you start an introduction and conclusion, like I mentioned. Make sure you are using Harvard system for referencing, and you can refer to online sites that you can use, such as Neil's Toolbox, which I've put a link there. It's a generator. This generator will identify and make up the reference for you using the book you put in, the title you put in, the edition you put in, the year of the book and where it was published. It will make it for you with all the dots and commas in the right place. There are other generators online that you can use, but this is ones that I refer to students and is used quite often. If you're using diagrams, please make sure you reference them accordingly. Try to use more examples when explaining certain concepts, for example, when looking at theories, practices, cases, things like that. Make sure you are using the assessment criteria as a heading for each part of the task. For example, if you're looking at task 1, as I mentioned, just going back to task 4, the assessment criteria is these as headings. Use these ones as headings, and this is to identify that you've completed every element of the assignment. You need to be referring to the indicative content all the time and checking your word count. Give proper headings and subheadings. Make your document look presentable and professional, and number your figure and diagrams. Ensure at least 6 to 10 references. Keep a check on the word count. So minus 20% tolerance limit, AI. So it needs to be below. avoid using it in some cases. Word count for this assignment is 3,000 words. Remember, there's a grading in this course, so grading is a pass or a refer. Do not use AI software to write this assignment. This is really, really important when we look at plagiarism. There's only 20% tolerance allowed, else if it will be considered malpractice, otherwise it will be considered malpractice. Please mention the grade you want to achieve in the unit, but for this unit, it's a pass or a fail anyway. If it is a graded unit, so the feedback can be done according, but if it's not graded, as in this unit, it's a pass or a refer. There's only once resubmission allowed in Ascentis assignments, but in this case, these are not Ascentis. That's only for Ascentis. In this case, it's OTHM. Okay, so that's only for Ascentis. That doesn't apply for you. Follow the numbering on the assignment presentation as against the assignment brief. So make sure you're looking at assignment brief. I'll show you that. That will be on Moodle to help you and guide you and support you. Some useful tips. Read the task carefully. Read what the tasks are. Stick to the word limit. Focus on the task and the command verbs. So broadly on guidance, command verbs, you can cover the task by writing, explain, define, describe, which is 100 and 100 to 25 words. Assess, examine, clarify, and analyze 175 to 225 words. Compare, contrast, critically evaluate 250 to 300 words. And the Harvard referencing needs to be Harvard system, where's the author, the date, style. For example, in text, you could use Slack, Johnson, Brandon Jones, 2011. In the reference towards the end, it must be shown as the full text. Minimum of 6 reference books, as we said, a bibliography. Give proper headings and subheadings. Make sure your document looks presentable, as I've mentioned earlier as well, and there's a lot of repetition. Word limit is 3,000 words plus 10%. Plagiarism or tolerance below 20%. Plenary, make sure you are not copying and pasting work as is plagiarism and would lead to academic misconduct. Make sure you reference all your sources, as I mentioned, and we're reiterating this and time and time again as these elements come up when students have submitted assignments. Make sure you check your grammar and spelling, and that's really important, or avoid using American style. Refer to ebooks and journals on Moodle for this unit. If using UK Varsity slides, then the referencing will be as below, MDT 2022. In the bibliography, that is that in the text, in the bibliography, you would write multidisciplinary teams, learning outcome 1, slide number 2 to 10, UK Varsity, published on 15th December, 15th January 2023, and that's the full citation. Okay, that needs to go in the bibliography, not in the main text. Any queries, questions you have, you need to be referring to learner work at ukvarsity.co.uk, and submission of the assignment is to be done on learner work at ukvarsity.co.uk. And the assignment submission within 2 weeks of completion of the units and the assignment discussion. So as we've done this now, you would be able to get your assignment done within the 2 weeks and make sure that you are sticking to the criteria that is on the slide so that you don't have any issues with submitting the assignment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you the assignment brief so you've got a better idea of what we need to do when looking at the assignment brief. So this is the assignment brief. This is what is on Moodle for you to look at. So in this, it identifies your unit reference number, the unit title, the unit level, which is level 5, the credits, the hours. It gives you the grading type as well, so pass or refer. Gives you the unit aims and then goes into more detail with the learning outcomes, what is expected of your assessment criteria. So learning outcome has 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Learning outcome 2 has what? 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. And then learning outcome 3 has 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. And then learning outcome 4 has 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.5. And that will all relate to your assignment as well. So the scenario is here. It's exactly the same what is done on the slides. I've just put them on the slide so it's easier for you to refer to it and has the recording. Each task is there. Again, make sure you read the tasks properly and identify what you need to do. So this part has 3 parts to it. Task 1, the principles, the business related laws and differences between civil and criminal. It gives you the word count there as well. So that's quite clear what the word count is and your referencing. Then task 2 is the same. It identifies your assignment brief and the guidance and tells you what you need to put in there. So there's 4 parts to that. And then the word count is there as well. So it gives you more of an idea. Then task 3 is there, which tells you to prepare a 10-minute presentation on the elements of consumer, contract or law of tort and international laws, and looks at the delivery and submission and how many words and the referencing for that. Then learning outcome 4, task 4 is there, which looks at the 4 parts of it, what you need to look at, which I've given you guidance where you can find them on the learning outcome, and it is 800 words and the recommended delivery. So this is the assignment brief. So this is what you need to be looking for on Moodle, but exactly the same information is on the slides for you as well. I'll just go back to the slides. So just going back to the slides, if you have any questions, make sure you are reading the tasks properly. Make sure you are not using AI as you have the tolerance of under 20%. Make sure you, if you have any questions or you need to ask any questions or anything about submission of your assignment, make sure you email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk and make sure you stick to the guidance and make sure you are when you are doing the tasks, as I keep mentioning to you, make sure, just going back to task 4 as an example, that is your heading, and make sure you write under that. Make sure you have a contents page with the page numbers on. Each part of each task which I've gone through, I have reiterated in red where you can find the information to complete that. Examples and things would, give you more, would help you, identify certain concepts so you could use, and also looking at elements of, again, going back to sticking to the word count. It's really important that you stick to what the requirements are of OTHM in regards to what they recommend in Word format, but it's mainly done in Word format. Make sure you are sticking to that. Also make sure you are sticking to the word count, and if you are putting diagrams, it's excluded any diagrams references, refer to them and make sure you are referencing all your work properly and using the Harvard system. Again, any questions, email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk and please make sure you are, if you need to use Neil's toolbox, there's a link there. If you don't have Microsoft Word, there's a link that I've put at the top at the start, which you could get access to Microsoft Word to use it. Do not use Google to do your assignment. Okay, so again, good luck with doing the assignment. Check your grammar, your punctuation, referencing, check that, reiterate that, and keep going back to doing that again and again. And good luck with doing all the 4 tasks for this assignment. And thank you for attending today's session.